Good morning, Chloe, and good morning, Urli and listeners. It doesn't really to be present in court today, as you correctly said. Today it's a finalization of any pre-trial management issues, and also it's for the parties to agree on a trial date. Of course, the court role of Peter Marisbeck allowing. So he as the accused with the arrangement, of course, with the relevant parties, it does not necessarily have to be there.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about the back and forth between yourselves and the Jacob Zuma Foundation statement, which stated that this matter had been postponed, where he again sought to sort of tell the public that, you see, the state is once again delaying my trial date. And as we all know, in the law, justice delayed is justice denied. Why would the former president be saying these things, Sipho? Are you going to delay this trial, already a trial that has been going on for decades?
That was a bizarre statement, Kholi, in the sense that when the matter was postponed and given a provisional date of today, there was a consent agreement between all parties, including the legal team that represent the former president. And the part of that agreement is what is going to happen today, management of pre-trial issues, but also agreeing on a trial date. So today was never a trial date, but today the parties had to meet and finalize those things because at the time, Thales had taken on review the charges that were preferred against them. And therefore they lost that. When they lost, they said they were not going to appeal, which then paved the way for the trial to start in earnest. The state is ready. The state wants to start. In fact, we, between us and Thales, have a preferred date, which is the 17th of May. All things being equal, we can start on that date, but it depends on a number of things, as I said, on the court role, on the other accused as availability with regards to their defense team, and the dates allowing for the presiding officer to be able to hear the matter. So I think that either someone was being grossly mischievous, or I think it's just someone doesn't understand how these things unfold. But we had an agreement with the legal representative from all teams, including Mr. Zuma's legal team, and they agreed to how things are unfolding. So today was never meant to be a trial date.
Yeah. Before I bring in Ulrich Roux, very briefly for me, Sipho, yesterday, the Commission of Inquiry filing an affidavit before the Constitutional Court where they are asking the Concourt to find the former president in contempt of court for his continued refusal to appear before that commission. How would it complicate matters in relation to this trial that the former president is going to be facing around the arms deal if indeed the Constitutional Court does find him to be in contempt of court and therefore possibly facing 2 years in prison?
It doesn't really affect things much. You must remember, we always do have a number of accused with outstanding matters while serving in prison for other things. They would come there in their orange overalls and some in chains, making sure that the outstanding matters are being finalized. The same will happen if indeed the accused is sent to prison with the cooperation of correctional services. He should be able to attend to other matters that he has to face, whether it's this corruption trial, whether it's other matters emanating from the complaints around the contempt of court or commission complaints against him. So all those things can take place as long as he is in custody somewhere in South Africa. Means should be made logistically for him to be able to be brought to court at the appropriate dates and times.
Yeah. Ulrich Roux, let's bring you into the conversation. You've been monitoring the Zuma trial for a long time now. Let's look back at just some of the hurdles that have been faced along the way. From where you sit, is this particular case ready for trial?
Hi, good morning, Cele and Sipho. Yes, I mean, I agree with Sipho just firstly on his statement that it's completely bizarre that Jacob Zuma is claiming that the state is delaying this matter. I mean, if one looks at the history of it, it dates back to 1999 when these charges emanated, and Jacob Zuma has done everything within his power to try and delay this matter and to so to say kick the can down the road. But the matter now does seem to be rife, and I think that we must remember, as Sipho pointed out, that Cele, the co-accused, did make representations to the NPA in an attempt to have the charges withdrawn. And then they furthermore launched an application for a stay of prosecution. Both these applications were dismissed, and the matter is now ready to proceed to trial.
Ulrich, there is, of course, the other element now that sort of complicates matters for the former president, and that is the matter that he is fighting with the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture about putting the request for an imprisonment term of 2 years aside. Let's park that for a second. The former president has had 2 criminal complaints filed against him by the Commission of Inquiry, rather, and it has to do with the former president snubbing the commission twice. The third element being this one, therefore, where the commission wants a 2-year prison term if the court does find him to be in contempt. Are these two matters separate, and can they be viewed as separate from what the Commission of Inquiry is looking for here and now?
Yes, they're completely separate, and they should be treated as such. Jacob Zuma is facing criminal charges of fraud in a South African High Court, whereas he was called to testify in front of the State Capture Commission. He then refused to testify, after which the commission approached the Constitutional Court, and a Constitutional Court order was handed down confirming that Jacob Zuma had to adhere to the summons that was issued on him and that he had to testify at the Commission of Inquiry. He has now elected to act in contempt of that court order, and it is, of course, an order made by the highest court of our country. And the application launched yesterday afternoon seeks to hold him in contempt and then to seek the required punishment, which should be handed out to a person who is held to be in contempt of a constitutional court order. So if the Constitutional Court considers this application and finds him to be in willful contempt, then an order could be made that he should be imprisoned for a period of 2 years. Obviously, also that he be granted an opportunity to purge his contempt. So in other words, that he will then go and testify at the Commission of Inquiry and accordingly will no longer be in contempt of a court order. But we must remember that these are 2 very separate issues. The one relating to criminal charges of fraud, racketeering, money laundering being leveled against Jacob Zuma, and the other being that he is currently in contempt of a constitutional court order.
Sipho, let's bring you back in. The element about the 2 criminal complaints from the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. Is that matter before you right now as the National Prosecuting Authority? And what are you doing about it?
Yes, indeed. The investigation is being done by the Hawks. They have given us the docket. Of course, we had to apply our minds in terms of that and given further instructions in terms of what we think needed to be followed up. So yes, there is a process between us, as it normally happens, and the Hawks, and at the appropriate time, then the NPA would have to pronounce in whether or not charges should be, or Mr. Zuma should be charged. But for now, the investigation is still continuing. There have been further instructions that have been given to the investigating team to follow up on certain matters with regards to that complaint.
The first complaint, Sipho, would have come to you last year sometime. This was after he walked off the Commission of Inquiry into state capture. That was in November last year. The Hawks told us back then that they were investigating this matter. By now, surely something should have happened from your side.
Yes, as I said, they did come to us eventually sometime this year, and we gave further instructions. And you must remember, there was also another contempt or alleged contempt which would have happened around January. So in terms of the investigating team, they had to look at those things holistically. So those are the things that we are considering, and those are the things that the investigating team is tying up the knots in terms of making sure that that matter is ready for a decision in one way or the other.
All right, let's take a short breather. Gentlemen, let me ask you to please stay where you are. When we return, we're going to find out from Sipho about how strong their case around the arms deal, how strong enough is it, and could they possibly secure a conviction, which is what they have been looking for over the years. You're watching Newsfeed, the AM edition. Very good morning to you. If you're just joining us, we are in conversation with the NPA spokesperson, Sipho, and we also have legal expert Ulrich Roo, who has been watching the case around the former president, Jacob Zuma, for a very long time. Ulrich Roo, let's quickly wrap it up with you. I know you have to go. Perhaps there is the question that has been lingering since, I guess, this morning, if you like, and it's about whether the former president might lose all his privileges as a former head of state if he is, for example, found to have been in contempt of court, which is the aspect around the Constitutional Court, or if indeed he is found guilty of this case that is before the Pietermaritzburg High Court today surrounding the arms deal. Is that something that could possibly happen? Or does it actually have to be impeachment that makes the former president lose his privileges? Because South Africans out there are asking themselves, why would he still be entitled if he is now a criminal?
Well, I think, Toli, the most important thing that we must always remember is that all South African citizens are equal before our Constitution. So whether you are an ex-president or an incumbent president or Joe Soap on the street, all the constitutional laws are applicable to everyone. And Jacob Zuma, regardless of the fact that he is a former head of state, has elected to act in a manner that is in contempt of a constitutional court order handed down. So yes, indeed, if he is found to be in contempt, then definitely he will lose all privileges that could have been bestowed upon him as a previous head of state, because he is equal before the law, just as everyone else is in South Africa. And similarly, if he is convicted in the criminal trial in Pietermaritzburg, and he is handed down a sentence of imprisonment or a fine, then he would have to serve that sentence or pay that fine in exactly the same manner as anyone else would have had to, regardless of the fact that he is a former head of state. And I think that this is it's a very important question that you pose. In South Africa, there's for long been a notion and a perception that people who have or are in political power receive certain privileges that other people don't. And I think that the only way that we can do away with this notion and that we can restore society's faith in our police system, in the National Prosecuting Authority, as well as the judicial system, is if everyone is treated equally before our courts. And I think that is something that definitely both the Constitutional Court, upon hearing this application, holding Jacob Zuma in contempt, as well as the Pietermaritzburg High Court, upon adjudicating the current criminal charges, will have to adhere to and will have to keep in mind when hearing the evidence that is led.
Ulrich Roux, thank you very much, and thanks indeed for your patience. We let you go at this time, but Sipho Ngwema, let's stay with you for a bit, and that then leads me to ask you the question around the arms deal trial. Do you have a strong case as the prosecuting authority against the former president and Thales?
There's no doubt, Kholi, that we believe we have a winnable case. Of course, we wouldn't have gone this far in making sure that in the end justice is being done and the accused gets an opportunity to answer to the charges, because we know that we have got reasonable prospects of success. And when we look at the offenses that have been committed, and we have no doubt that the accused must answer, and we believe that independent presiding officer will find him guilty.
Why? What makes you believe? Tell South Africans what it is that you think you have that will make sure that you secure a conviction.
We have credible evidence. We have credible witnesses. And of course, you know that another part of this matter in the Shabir case was concluded with similar kind of merits. And we are fairly confident that when we put these facts and evidence before a judge, the public would have to watch as we present our case before the judge. Of course, some of the merits of this case have been in the public domain, but we know in terms of what would have happened way back then, in terms of certain documents that were exchanged between the accused and certain companies, certain influences that we believe were there illegally, and all those things will be canvassed, and we'll be able to bring witnesses to prove that the accused is guilty of the offenses that we are accusing him of. We don't want also to be accused of charging him in the court of public opinion, and that's why we prefer that he must answer to those charges in court, and he'll be able to have an opportunity to respond to our allegation.
And finally, how many witnesses do you have, and who would you consider key witnesses?
I think that it'll depend on how things pan out. It'll depend on certain things become common cause, and you don't have to call certain witnesses. All the witnesses that have to come and prove our allegations are key witnesses. Unfortunately, I don't have the exact number now, but it's quite a formidable number of witnesses that will come to have to testify, and they have a credible information that will assist us in proving the allegations. As I said before, some of them have testified in previous cases, in a previous case, which is also linked to the same accused, and those witnesses will be able to come forward to be able to testify in terms of what they know and what they can be able to prove.
Clear, Sipho Ngwema. I would like to ask you to tell the South Africans right now whether Shabir Sheikh, who was convicted in this matter, will be among your witnesses, or is it not on your witness list?
At the top of my head, I don't think that he's part of the witness list, but I can double check that. But as far as I know, I don't remember him being on the list.
All right, Sipho Ngwema, let's leave it there for the time being. And Sipho Ngwema speaking on behalf of the National Prosecuting Authority. This matter, a very important one, in particular also, I would argue, for the NPA itself, which has sort of been on trial, if you like, over the past decade,